Welcome to my interview series where I share conversations originally recorded live on LinkedIn. In each episode, I sit down with thoughtful people to explore their work, their ideas, and the stories behind them. Whether you're here to learn, reflect, or discover a new perspective, I'm so glad you're listening. Let's get into the conversation. And today I have the very fabulous Jeffrey Toe with me. Now, Jeffrey is a social psychologist, a communication coach, and he's founder of Speak Up in Montreal in Canada. And he's trained over 100, it's a big number, over 100 scientists and founders to communicate with clarity and confidence without scripts or slides or bullet points. He was a finalist or won multiple public speaking pitch competitions for scientists at McGill University and nationwide as well, and now coaches scientists at McGill for the 3-minute thesis program, which itself sounds amazing. So welcome, Jeffrey. It is fantastic to have you with us. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Kaffy. It's an absolute pleasure. I am feeling really good and I'm feeling super excited.
So I want to kick off by asking you, because I read a study once and it was about photographs. And they had a set of people and they showed them photographs of political candidates. And they said, which person do you think you're going to vote for? And, took all the names down. And then there was a 6-week campaign. So all of these candidates were out on the streets, they were on TV, they were on radio, they were out and about everywhere. And at the end of the 6 weeks, they went to the same people again and said, who are you going to vote for now? And almost to a person, they chose the same person, the same candidate that they'd said right at the beginning, that they had based their decision basically on the photo. And that 6 weeks of contact and, talking and everything had made so little difference.
Yes.
And that's amazing, isn't it? Because we think that all of the stuff that we say and all our interactions have a huge impact on people, but even just our photograph, like even just our face, like a 2D still face, has a massive impact on people's perception. So can you explain this? What's the psychology behind that?
Absolutely. So I love this topic because it is literally like my domain of research. I study for my PhD biases, judgment, and decision making. And a really big topic in this domain is what's called first impressions. So first impressions is exactly what this study shows, which is when people see a photograph for a first time, what is their immediate impression of the person just based on a photograph. And I think a lot of people think that, oh, a first impression is not that important because you see someone once and then you'll correct for it while talking with them, and that reveals their true personality. But in fact, first impressions are what's called sticky. They're sticky because exactly like your study, you see someone once and those first 10 seconds of the interaction, maybe 30 seconds if we're being generous, that decides, that becomes an anchor for the remaining time you have with that person in terms of how you judge them. So that's why this is such a huge topic, which is that you can form a judgment on a person just based on a very tiny slice of what you see about them. And this might sound a little bit irrational, but it actually makes a lot of sense evolutionarily speaking. When we were in our hunter-gatherer era, we don't have a lot of time to gather information about people. We have to make decisions in a split second. We have to act really quickly. And so first impressions is that kind of it's that shortcut that allows us to decide and make judgments of other people with a very, very tiny bit of information, which helps us act way quicker. And that's exactly why, like we see in the study, they have a massive influence despite being such a thin slice of what actually comprises an individual.
Isn't it amazing how much of communication and perception goes right back to our very, very ancient wiring? We're always trying to do things in a very modern way, and actually there's so much that is so deeply wired.
Yes.
So when we look at those, if I look at those photographs of those candidates, what am I looking for? Am I looking for people who are similar to me? Is it a sort of brain familiarity thing? Why might I like one photo of a person more than another photo?
Okay, so that's exactly it. You pointed out one really big factor, which is similarity. Similarity, as human beings, we just generally prefer other people who look similar to us and also share the same groups as us. So for example, if I were a white person, I would have a preference for other white people. If I were an Asian person, I would have a preference for other Asian. I mean, I am an Asian person. What am I saying? As an Asian person, I have a preference for other Asian people. And that just kind of goes back again to our like very primal instinct to prefer people who are in the same group as us. We have this tribal instinct. And that's not the only reason. It's also because on a cognitive level, so on the level of like us processing information, it's just way easier for us to process information that feels very familiar and very similar, because we already have all of the processing, what's called processing fluency, to process stuff that is similar to what we look like. And so because of that, like we just generally prefer other people, other things that look similar because they feel the most familiar to us. They feel the most comfortable.
And does that work for voices as well, for accents and sort of turns of phrase and all those kind of things?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, there's so much scientific literature on how accent bias plays a huge role in hiring decisions. Like if you were to play, let's say you had the same job candidate, and in one condition you heard someone with a North American accent, and the other condition you heard someone with an Indian accent or a Chinese accent, people are going to have like a implicit bias against a person with a foreign accent, because a foreign accent signals to us that they're not part of our groups. They come from elsewhere. And again, it goes back to us preferring like our tribes, the people who look like us, who sound like us, who make us feel the most comfortable.
That's really interesting. So back to the photos for a second. So I've heard of this thing called the halo effect. How does that work in terms of, so if I'm looking at those candidate photos, what is the implication there?
Yes, the halo effect is basically this idea that we use beauty or physical appearance as a proxy for a lot of other characteristics. Even though, like rationally speaking, your physical appearance has nothing to do with, let's say, your intelligence, your like physical ability. It has nothing to do with how funny you are. And yet, as human beings, we infer that based on your level of physical appearance, we infer that you're also more competent, you're also more funny, you're also higher in these certain characteristics. And that's what the halo effect is that like we're kind of using beauty or physical appearance as a proxy for a lot of other characteristics that statistically speaking have no relevance.
So is that why if someone comes onto the stage and they look really confident,
Yeah.
we sort of assume that they're going to be good? So if somebody manages to
Yeah.
even perform confidence, we think that they are also across their subject matter, and that's why we sort of automatically trust what they're saying, even if what they're saying might not be true.
Exactly. I mean, like, just think about it. If you had someone walk into a TED stage with a hoodie, with a logo on it, with like khaki shorts, we're not going to have a very, like, we're going to, like, even though they might, objectively speaking, be the smartest person in the room, they might be the funniest person, they might be the best spoken person in the room, just based on their physical appearance, we're going to think that they're kind of like, they're not really taking their role very seriously. On the other hand, if someone walks on stage with a suit, who walks on stage with their entire appearance like very well coiffed, they look like they're prepared, they look like every single detail of their body is like kind of shaped like very refined, we're gonna use that and think this person knows what he's talking about. This person like looks like he is someone who is like a big person on stage. So again, it goes back to like us forming judgments of other people just based on purely physical cues.
So, and I know you do a lot of work with people who are pitching and presenting. Sometimes pitches aren't very long, sometimes you don't get very long to actually, do your actual pitch in person. And I know that you use this phrase, the pitch before the pitch.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that we have, because of social media and because, you know, there's so much transparency now, do you mean that everything else about us, so maybe our LinkedIn profile, our website, things maybe other people say about us, comments we've made, like there's such a backlog, isn't there, that if you are, say, pitching for something, those people on the panel, they could have looked you up, and there could have been a lot of first impressions data that panel has about you before you even walk in the room. So how powerful is that?
Absolutely. So here's the thing. It's like a lot of the people that I work with, they think that the moment people form first impressions is the moment they start speaking. But that's not true. Because in reality, people start forming impressions of you before you even open your mouth. People look at you the moment you walk into the room, the moment you walk up on stage, or even before that. Like when people are on your LinkedIn profiles, looking at your credentials, your photo, your details, that's when the first touch point actually happens, not when you open your mouth. And so that's exactly why it's so important to have all of these little details like completely prepared before you even do your pitch. Because like, and that's why I like to call it the pitch before the pitch, because people are already deciding whether or not they want to trust you before your pitch even began. They decided when they first read your bio. They decided when they first saw your photograph online. They decided when they shook your hand in the room when you introduced yourself to that person.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. This is something I talk about a lot, the fact that like we have no off switch.
Yeah.
Do we? We have no off switch in human communication. If we are in a room with people, we are communicating all the time. Even if you're standing quietly in the corner of the room, you are still communicating. So when you walk onto the stage, and you know, we can get into this a little bit, but you know, there are these moments when you walk onto the stage and you maybe take the microphone, you maybe pick up the clicker, you know, there's all of this stuff that you're doing, and I think in a lot of people's heads, they're like, oh, nobody is watching this bit. Like they understand that I'm preparing. And it's like, actually, no. as soon as you walk on, you are communicating. So we need to do all of that stuff in the way that we want to be perceived. You know, that there is no off switch. A technique I like to teach people a lot, I call BISPEC. And BISPEC stands for, and this is when you've done all your prep and you're ready to begin. But this is about getting the pause. And this is something, as you will know, that high status individuals find this very easy to do, is the pause, the something is about to happen moment. So, you know, a Barack Obama doesn't sort of start talking as soon as he gets to the lectern. You know, he's able to take in the room, and he will look around. And when he is ready, he will start to speak. And, you know, great speakers, high status speakers, they speak on their terms when they are ready. So I teach this thing called BISPEC, which stands for breathe in, smile, pause, eye contact, and then you talk. And it takes, you can also do it at sort of points within your talk when it can take, you know, just a couple of seconds. But at the beginning, it's a really good thing for people because they can literally go through the steps. So you have to breathe in, smile. The smile is going to help with everything from nerves to your voice tone. So that the smile, and then the pause. And while you're doing the pause, you're making some specific eye contact with people around the room. And this is indicating to everyone in the room, you know, something's about to happen here. I'm about to
creating
share.
Suspense. It's creating
anticipation.
It's so powerful.
Exactly. And that pause is so crucial. So before, as you say, before you even open your mouth, you have just said so much. Oh, I just want to say hello to Purav, who is taking notes in India.
Hello.
Oh, well, this is amazing because we're like across.
We're literally going global.
So we are global. Yeah, thank you, Parth, for joining us. This is brilliant. So what do you think about that? I'm guessing you teach a similar thing to your pitching people. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I love what you said with the BISPEC, because for me, I call that the opening sequence. Like how you walk on stage, how you collect yourself before you even open your mouth. That part is a part that unfortunately nobody practices. When again, it goes back to like first impressions. People are looking at you before you even open your mouth. So here's like something that I often see with the people that I coach. It's like because they feel really nervous and because they feel so many like so much adrenaline going through their body before their speech begins, oftentimes what happens is like, oh my gosh, you're gonna see my sweatpants, but they like do this and they cover their crotch area and they kind of signal to other people that I'm in a defensive state, or that they're kind of like feeling really threatened. And so like when they do that closed body language, it kind of also makes us feel as audience members that either you're really nervous or you're not really going to open up during your speech. And that's exactly why you have to really nail that opening sequence. You want to make sure that when you walk up on stage, you walk in a way that signals confidence, like you're comfortable, you're ready. And also, like you said, you don't have to start the moment you like walk in front of the stage. You can take a deep breath, collect yourself, look at the audience members, and kind of like feel like just allow the silence to sit for a little bit and then speak.
Yeah. I think it's amazing, isn't it? Because there's that great phrase, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But the thing is, in daily life, no, you don't. And you often don't know in just daily life when you're meeting people, you don't know when that first impression is going to come. You know, you don't know when you're going to meet people often for the first time. The thing about a picture presentation is you do know, you're going to get a first impression.
Yeah.
So why not plan? Why not have that first impression be the first impression that you want to give? But as you say, people never really think about this stuff. They think about their first line or the first slide, or, they think about the bit they're going to do.
Yeah.
But they don't think about the engagement with the audience, that moment that they can create, that incredibly special sort of live moment with the audience. Yes. And what you said there about the closed posture, and of course we can have a closed face as well. We can have a worried face, which doesn't have like a tense face. Doesn't have your voice tone either. And the closed thing. Sometimes when you're nervous, having an open posture, it can be difficult because everything in your head is like, I need to shrink. I don't like taking up space.
Yeah, you want to shrink yourself. You want to be defensive. All that.
I find I use this phrase heart-led now, and I find people really like it because literally you open your shoulders, you tuck your chin a little bit, lengthen the back of your neck, and you walk up to the stage, or you walk into a room or whatever, literally feel like your heart is leading you. And if you can think that, because it's such a powerful thing, and actually if you feel like you're being led by your heart, you automatically open. Do you know what I mean? Because you can't be led by your heart and be shrinking.
Yes.
You can't do it. So I use that a lot. Trying to teach people open posture is hard. If you say we're heart-led, we're straight, and we're going to be heart-led on the stage.
And also, here's the thing. So a lot of people don't know this, but when you're feeling nervous, it's so much easier to calm yourself down and override your nerves with doing something with your body than telling yourself, don't be nervous, don't be nervous. Take a deep breath. Like there's what's called in psychology, the mind-body connection, or embodied cognition, which is the fact that like what you do with your body has such a huge influence on how you feel internally. So if you're like this, you're signaling to your mind that you're feeling closed off. And as a consequence, you're going to act and sound very closed off in your speaking engagement. On the other hand,
I love that phrase, embodied condition. Yeah, I just love that phrase. Yeah, it's great. It's great.
And it's like when you're open and you're sick and you're physically opening yourself up with your gestures, with your face, with your expressions, you're also telling your mind that I'm feeling expressive. I'm feeling open. I want to open up, right? So it's so much easier to kind of override that initial anxiety by doing something with your body than by like having that internal dialogue of calm down, because that doesn't work.
And this is coming from a psychologist, which is very, very exciting. So I talk all the time about the thoughts, the emotions, and the physical state. And these things are a triangle, and you cannot separate them. And it's something that it took me a very long time to learn, because you may know that 20 years ago, a bit more than 20 years ago, I had really horrific stage fright. And the only thing that fixed it for me was not trying to logic my way out of it, because there's a point where, if you have such a stress response, logic doesn't touch it, frankly. So, you have to get into some nervous system regulation, all this sort of stuff. But so understanding that my thoughts, my emotions, my body, They're all the same thing, and therefore
Yes.
you
They're
can change
connected. Yes.
one. Yeah, you can change one by changing the others, which is exactly what you just said about if you do something physical, that is going to change both your thoughts and your emotions. And people, I
Yes.
think we're so cerebral, aren't we? The modern world, we're so we sit there in our thoughts and our emotions constantly, and we're always trying to sort of work out our thoughts and our emotions, and the
Hmm.
body gets forgotten. So I'm so
Yeah.
pleased we've got a psychologist here saying, they're all one, embodied condition. We can change one of those three things
Yeah.
by using the other one.
Exactly. And this reminds me of this comment from a post you posted, actually. I forgot which one it was,
Oh,
but I left a comment of like, when I need a reset, I always do something physical to like physically reset, which
mm,
also by consequence helps me mentally reset.
that's right.
So, for example, I might be having a really packed day with like 10 meetings, and rather than like sitting still and just like allowing the blank space to help me feel better, it's so much easier than to physically do something different, like whether that's walking, whether that's going outside, placing yourself in a different location.
Yes.
That, like, it's easier to fix your thoughts with your body than more thoughts. I think that's my point.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Change the sensory input. I mean, I read that. See, I'm not an ophthalmologist, but I read that
Yeah.
the eyes, because we spend so much time with this short distance, we spend so much time looking at screens now. And of course,
Yeah.
not just tunnel vision, but the same distance. So you're literally looking at one spot. So at the minute I'm looking at you on the screen, I could be in a
Mm,
2-hour meeting and looking at you on the screen, and my eyes rarely move from this position, and my brain interprets this as threat, because the only time you do that in the natural world, the only time you would stare like that at something
like
would would
when?
would be a threat. That's the thing. And so our
Yeah.
brain, we're very deeply wired to interpret that as threat. And that's why, when we get to the end of the day, we've been on the computer all day, we're exhausted, because we've
Oh
basically
yeah.
been in this low stress state for the whole day. So
Yeah.
even, I mean, I try and make myself, I look out of my window, I look to the horizon, just to relax my eyes. And I know that's the
Yeah.
advice a lot, isn't it? Like, get up, walk around, move your eyes, move your body constantly,
Yeah.
because without it, we get into this. If we get
Mm,
into sort of a locked body state, then actually
yeah.
our thoughts and our emotions suffer in the same way. They get sort of,
Absolutely.
they get closed off and tense.
Absolutely.
So
And you know what? That actually segues to another thought I had, because
yeah,
I
yeah,
think right now we're talking a lot about context and about our physical environment. And I think that is such a huge factor that not often gets talked about in terms of making a really good first impression. Which
mm-hmm.
is that, like, yes, our appearance is one thing, our clothes, the way we act in the first like 8 seconds of our pitch, that's one thing.
Yeah,
But also think about your environment. So let's say, for example, we're doing a Zoom pitch. Like, is your lighting good? Is your camera quality good? Is before this call, like Kaffy, you pointed out I had clothes on my bed. So I had to quickly remove all my clothes. Like, these little things can have a huge impact on how people judge you, right?
and
And
not
it
and not
all
just
goes back.
and not just judge you. I mean, we've all been in those kind of calls. I mean, things are actually much better now, but you remember, like during COVID, when all of this sort of Zoom stuff was just starting, and a lot of the
Mm,
times those conversations were done in quite, and also I think Wi-Fi and everything's improved the last few years. You would have quite a lot of like crackly conversations, and
yeah,
it interrupts the relationship. If you're having to focus really hard, and there might be a lag on the audio, or there might be cuts in the audio, or
yeah,
you're having to do all of this sort of extra processing, anything which puts a barrier between you and the other person
yeah,
actually has an effect on that relationship. So yeah, totally. If you're doing an online interview and you've got a fuzzy screen, or you've got a poor microphone, or you've got,
absolutely.
that is, they might not intend to judge you on that, but
Yeah,
they will be, because that's just how
absolutely.
we work.
Yeah.
How we
And
work.
it's funny too, because this reminds me of a workshop I did with a cohort of people pivoting to tech. And I was doing some live coaching, and this woman did her pitch. It was great. But the one suggestion I had for her was, you have to change your microphone, because
I
that
really,
microphone from your laptop, your like, I forgot which model it was. I think it was like a
uh,
HP 7. It was really old. It was so
uh,
crackly. I couldn't hear it. The audio quality was really bad. And for me, that it was a good, like,
would get in
objectively,
the
the
way.
content was
Yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
But for me as a listener, it got in the way of
Mm,
understanding what she was
mm.
saying. And if you're going to work in a really like technical environment where everything is high tech, you're working quickly, and you have to make sure that everything is communicated as clearly as possible all the time. Why not invest in your technology? Like my microphone, this cost me like, my microphone, this cost me like $20 on Amazon during Black Friday. Like my webcam, it's like $10 on Amazon. It takes no money, but it's such a good investment for the ROI you have for your appearance.
Yeah. Right. Just before because I want to get on to the words now.
Yes.
I want to get on to the words of our first impression. But just before we do that, we have a question. So Parav says, how to handle the audience or the fear of not being able to control the audience when they are talking or not listening to us. If I can just take the bit about the not listening, Parav. So I have this theory that when we look out at an audience and we think people are bored or grumpy, they can just be focusing because most of our facial muscles, and you will know this, Jeffrey, so many of our facial muscles are actually basically just there for communication, like our eyebrows and a lot of the way we move our faces is there for communication. So if we don't feel the need to communicate, and if you're part of an audience, you don't really feel the need to communicate because it's like they're talking at me, I can just sit here and watch them, and so you let your face go flat, and you can look bored or grumpy or disinterested. They're not necessarily. They can be taking it all in, they can be loving it, they can be laughing inside, they're just not showing you on their face. So I would say on that bit, Parav, don't think they're not listening to you. If they're looking at you but looking a bit bored, don't assume they're not listening. They probably are listening. They're just not communicating with you.
Yeah.
What would you
I love this question because this was also one of my biggest barriers when I first started public speaking. Here's the thing. Audience members, just as a fact, they have the ugliest faces. It's always the same. They have the ugliest faces. And like you said, Kaffy, it's not because they hate you. It's because they're concentrating on your talk. They don't have the energy to be like, all the time. That's not how it works. So a couple things. Number one is don't look at their faces, look at their foreheads or the hair. If you want to like fake eye contact without actually paying eye contact, you don't have to look at their faces. You can just look at their foreheads or like their hairline, and people will think you're looking at them, but you're not. That's tip number one. Tip number two, if you're crazy like me, when I started, like, so I'm myopic. I can't see very far. And what I would do to get over this anxiety of faces was like, I remember my first couple talks, I would like go into them and not wear my glasses or my contacts and just have this blurred audience, blurred audience. And like this, I know it sounds absolutely insane, but for me, it just worked like a charm. Like I couldn't see their faces. And so I could just focus on what I can control, which is the way I act and the way I speak. And so for the people listening to this, for the people listening to this who don't have the privilege of myopia, who don't want to do this, I think my advice to you is control what you can control. So for you, that might be like, just focus on controlling the way you sound, the way you look. You cannot control the way that other people, like whether or not they listen and whether or not they have a pretty face while they're listening.
No, and actually we don't need to. So I always say, if you're the public speaker, it's not the audience's responsibility to give you anything back. It's lovely if they do. It's lovely if they do. But if they don't, it's not their responsibility. You know, if you're the person on stage and you're sharing whatever it is that you're sharing, you know, you're on the stage or you're on the front, you can control the energy in that room. And if different people some people will communicate with you, some people you look at and they will smile and nod because they know what it's like, or because they're really into it or whatever, but you know, you have that choice about who you look at. On the other part of your question, Parav, about being able to control the audience when they're talking or sort of actively not listening to you, there are various ways we can control an audience in terms of the energy. You have things like, you have changes in volume, and actually bizarrely enough, talking more quietly is usually the way to bring the audience level down, because if you go louder, they tend to go louder still. But
Mm.
anything which will pattern interrupt, so any sort of sudden movement, a
Yeah.
joke, a change of something, if you move suddenly across the stage, if you do make sudden movements with your, but like anything to get their attention is likely
Yeah.
to to get them back on board. Attention is, we're not even on attention today. That's like a hot, but yeah, thank you for, we need to, we'll do another one, Jeffrey, just on
Yes, we'll
attention.
do a whole other
A whole
series on
series.
this.
But thank you, Parag, for your question. I hope that was a little bit helpful. So moving on to the words. So we've covered the sort of the pitch before the pitch. So, you know, setting up people before you even get to the stage. And then we've thought about the when you first
Yeah.
get onto the stage and how you hopefully curate that initial moment and you signal something is about to happen. And
Yeah.
then it needs to happen and you need to open your mouth. So what do we need to think about with our first words?
Okay, so the content. For me, the thing that people often don't think about is that kind of like how, so nowadays, like there's TikTok, there's YouTube Shorts, there's a lot of short form content. And the one piece of advice that every single creator always gives you is you need to have a hook. You need to have a hook. It's the same thing for pitches. You need to make sure that your first sentence, it hooks the attention of the people listening. How do you do that? There's a lot of different strategies, but let me give you like 2 examples. One strategy is to ask them a question. Raise your hand up if you have ever had a experience of blanking on stage. Great. Keep your hand up if you memorize your script, but you still blank on stage. And then you start. And from that, like the audience is on like immediate, like, okay, this happened to me. This is probably relevant. Another strategy that I often recommend is start with something really counterintuitive or even controversial. Start with a statistic or a fact that 90% of the people in the audience has no idea about. And so, for example, like, if you're in, let's say, if you're in psychology, what if I told you that 90% of how people judge you as a person has nothing to do with the content of your speech and everything to do with the first 10 seconds? Boom. People are like, what? What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean that my content has no relevance? Like, you want to blow their minds the first 10 seconds so that opens the window to them listening to the remainder of your speech. And that's why a hook is so important.
And that plays into this whole sort of the primacy recency thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That we always remember the beginning and the end. So I've seen some really good talks where the end makes some sort of reference to the beginning in order that to even to strengthen that link even more. But yeah, so having some sort of hook to start with, a question is brilliant. And as you just demonstrated there, if you're going to do a hands up, so my phrase is always hands up who. If you're going to do a hands up who, always put your own hand up. Because
Absolutely.
if you say, hands up who XYZ, no one will put their hand up. If you put your hand right up, hands up who, people will automatically,
like
even
it's
before you've
actually
said
crazy.
it, they're like,
It's such a monkey see monkey do thing, because it's funny because every time I'm like, hands up who, and like I swear to God, half of the people who don't, like, who have their hands up don't actually understand the question, but they just put their hands up because they see me putting their hands up. Like it's like
and actually, you see, going back to what we said before about the thoughts and the emotions and the physical state, as soon as they've done that, they are involved. They have moved. They have moved. And what I mean, to answer Purav's question again, sort of about the the getting people's attention thing when they're not listening to you, get them to move. Say, okay, everyone on your feet, we're going to do, for me, it would be something like, everyone on your feet, we're going to do this breathing thing, we're going to do this eye thing.
We're going to do squats, we're going to move. Well,
if you can get them moving, then they are involved, because they have to be involved. So even just that sort of, even the hands up who, they're sort of, it's like a bit of a small yes in sales. You know, this thing about sales where you're always trying to get like the little yeses. It's
the micro yeses, exactly.
Yeah, if you do a hands up who, you're getting like this micro yes, because they've
Yeah.
already partaken a little bit in what you're saying. So then they're more likely to stay with you because they've already given you a little bit. So I think that's a really good start. And as you say, the sort of the crazy fact, that moment of awe and wonder, like curiosity is such a indelible sort of human a thing. And actually in most of our daily lives, sometimes depends what job you do, but you know, curiosity is kind of lacking a lot of the times. If you come up with a crazy, like, cool fact about something, people are interested because they're like, oh, that is different. Like, I don't hear that every day. So they automatically.
Yeah. The amount of times that I've seen like conference talks from, so I was at like a event called Tech TO recently, Tech Toronto. The amount of times I've seen like conference talks start with, hi everyone, it's so nice to meet you. I'm actually really nervous doing this, but so today I'm going to talk about blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yo, that's such a boring way to start, and you've already lost us. It's a waste of your time. You have like 5 minutes, and you're gonna start off with, "Hi everyone, my name is this, and I work for this company." You don't need to know that because they already know that from the introduction they did like 7 minutes earlier. Just start your speech.
Just go, just go straight in. And I mean, if you do need to introduce yourself, you can always sort of say something. And then like, introduce yourself, because then you've got a bit of sort of capital, you've got a bit in the bank with the audience then that you can sort of explain who you are, and then you can get back into the stuff. Okay, so we've got our pause, and we've got our first line. The first line is going to be interesting, and the first line is going to engage the audience. Can we just touch on, so we talked a little bit about open and closed posture, but can we talk just a little bit about physicality on the stage? Because I'm a big one for taking up space. Because I think if you take up physical space, not just in the standing still, but actually in moving around the space, and obviously it is contextual. Sometimes you might have you might have slides, you might not be able to move that much. But actually the power of movement, and what we call in communication proxemics, like how close you are to people. Like Purav was saying again about, so another thing for you, Purav, if you want people's attention, take a big step towards them, go right towards them. They will look at you, they'll be like, what are they doing? And they will look at you, and they will listen. And again, if you sort of move around the stage, you can change the whole energy in the room just by moving very, very quickly, or by making sudden movements. So just thinking about the status things, I think one of the difficult things about pitching is necessarily it's almost like low status pitching to high status, isn't it? Like if you're pitching for funding, you're kind of asking people for something. And this is something that we find hard. Like we love offering, we love giving things to people. And so sometimes I think, the easiest presentation to give is one, say that you've given a lot of times before, it goes down really well. People love it. It's like the right audience. They're going to take loads of value away. Like that's relatively easy to do, because as long as you get up with a spirit of, generosity, and I've got this amazing thing to share with you, there's not a lot can go wrong. If you're pitching to the kind of people that you're coaching, they're needing to make a great first impression. They need to be liked. They need to be impressive. They need to have that authority. So what can the movement aspect and the taking up space, what can that add to that moment?
I love this question, because like, especially for the shyer folks in the room, or women, or like people who are socialized to not take up space, this is such a huge barrier to overcome. And for me especially, like I grew up as a really shy kid. I remember like in my kind of dark, but my CBT journals, I was like, I didn't want to like take up the, like, on trains or seats sometimes. I didn't want to sit on any of the seats, because I thought like if I sat on one of those seats, I would be taking up space from other people. And I felt bad about it. It's the same mentality. It's like a lot of people feel really bad for taking up space on stage, just like they hate taking up space in the metro, in tables, in restaurants, in every other context. But then if you are given a stage, you have every single right to take up the entire stage. Don't just stick with one. I mean, this is something I do all the time, by the way, but don't just stick with one spot. Don't just stand still the entire time and like speak like this. Again, it's contextual. Sometimes you have to when you're talking
Yeah.
at a podium. But if you get the chance, if you're talking with a mic or if you have a headset, why not use up all of the space to signal to other people that you're comfortable taking space. You're comfortable asking for things. You're comfortable and like you're an authority in the space that like you literally signal it with the amount of movement you have with your speech. It's such a powerful signal. Yeah.
Which links right back to the stuff that you were saying at the beginning about that we attribute things to people who behave in a certain way. So people who are able to take up space on a stage and have that sort of level of confidence in their movement, in their expansive, if they can be expansive in their gestures, demonstrative in their gestures, demonstrative with their face, someone who can do all of that, we are going to assume that they are, they're probably bright, talented, that they give that sort of energy and enthusiasm to their work. So if I'm thinking about giving somebody some money for their project and I see them, taking up that space and moving around, am I going to impute those very sort of positive aspects to them about their work?
Absolutely. Like, let's contrast someone who's like really timid, they're at the same spot asking for $1 million for their venture, versus someone who is clearly prepared, they look prepared, they're taking up space, they're projecting, they're using up their hands and their gestures to make a point. I'm going to be way more compelled to trust a person who is comfortable taking more space with my money. Like, it's just a fact. Like, if you're not going to be comfortable to ask for something, then you don't have the conviction to succeed in your business. You need to have that conviction if you're going to ask people for $1 million, right?
I can't imagine that. Yeah. And that conviction, so that conviction and this is a whole conversation today. So that conviction needs to be evident when you walk through the door, when you walk onto the stage, when when you take up your position, that sort of, that mission, that conviction needs to be there throughout all of that. And then into the words and the hook and the content. So amazing. Absolutely. Well, we're nearly running out of time, Jeffrey. What is your so if listeners can only remember a few sort of practical takeaways from today, what would you say? What's your big tip to improve their first impressions?
I think the number one tip is practice the pitch before the pitch. A lot of people spend 90% of the time on their slides. If you're not the 90%, a lot of people spend a lot of time like memorizing the content of their speech. But not a lot of people use their preparation time for where it actually matters most, which is like the key points, the beginning, your intro, and the end, the call to action. Use a bulk of your time mastering that opening sequence and the way you start your speech. Because the reality is that if people are not listening to you in the first 90 seconds, they're not going to listen to you for the next 15 minutes of your pitch. You have to, don't just nail like the speech itself, nail everything before it. That's the key.
Yeah, this is amazing. I think I would say exactly the same thing. Kind of what I said earlier as well about how you get the choice. You can curate, like this first impression you can choose. That can be your choice, what your first impression is. So think about, like you just said, think about, how do I want to come across? Do I want to be friendly, approachable? Do I want to be authoritative? However I want to be, and think about embodying, like we talked about, embodied cognition.
Embodied cognition, yeah.
I love it. Embodying, exactly. So, whatever it is, however we want to, set that, I sometimes call it like an identity level aim, set whatever we want to be, how we want that first impression to be, and then sort of, the nuts and bolts of how do we do that? How do we do that in terms of what we're wearing, how we walk, how we speak, what we say? You have so much choice. I think sometimes people don't realize how much choice they have in these moments, the moments, before the content. You've got a lot of choice, a lot of control about how you come across.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jeffrey. You've been an absolute marvel.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much for everyone joining us today, whether live or on the replay, and have a great week.